I'd like to welcome everyone for the regular meeting of council, Wednesday, January 25th, here in the council chambers. And I think our first item is the national anthem. The municipality of Central Elgin acknowledges that it's located on the land of the McKee Treaty that was signed by the Wyandot and Anishinaabe nations, including ancestors of the Chippewas of the First Nation. It is also the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Attawandaronk, and Mississauga Nation. These First Nations continue to provide ongoing stewardship of the land and waters of the municipality of Central Elgin. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Seeing none, I have an addition under other business, which I'll put in as number 4. Delegations. Sorry, adoption of the meetings of previous meetings. I was thinking that if I get a mover and a seconder, apologies. Councillor Halpin, seconded by Councillor Connors.
Motion reads, Mayor Sloan, moved by Councillor Halpin, seconded by Councillor Connors, that the minutes of the regular meeting of council dated Monday, January the 9th, 2023 be adopted.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving forward, I see we don't have any delegations. Our next piece has to do with correspondence. Ms. Wilson.
Just looking for a mover and a seconder, Mayor Sloan, on the recommendation to approve the terms of reference for JAAC.
Mover and seconder, Councillor Morgan, Councillor Halpin, and Councillor Bachman.
Motion reads, Mayor Sloan, moved by Councillor Halpin, seconded by Councillor Bachman, that council approve the recommended amendments to the County of Elgin Central Elgin Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee terms of reference.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Number 2, Terrace Lodge. There's a discussion piece here because it's either we appoint someone or we go back for further. Perhaps any discussion on this item? Councillor Halpin.
I know that when I read it, I thought this looks like a really important project, but I certainly feel like we've all got a lot on our plates right now. And I looked at it and thought, I don't know if I can take on more things when I still haven't been oriented in all of the committees that I am on. I don't know if that's how other people feel. And I don't know if in past this was a council member or a member of the public.
Can I ask Mr. Shipway his thoughts?
Through Mr. Mayor, as a member of council.
Thank you. There is the opportunity, though, for us to look for someone. It's my suggestion that that's something that we do unless there's a counselor here that has an interest in the position. Can I get a mover? Motion that we go to advertise. Counselor Halpin and Counselor Connors.
Motion reads, Mayor Sloan, moved by Counselor Halpin, seconded by Counselor Connors, that council direct staff to publicly advertise for interested persons to serve on the Terrace Lodge Redevelopment Fundraising Committee.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Number 3, 2023 Childcan Polar Bear Dip. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Counselor Watson, Deputy Mayor Noble.
Motion reads, Mayor Sloan, moved by Counselor Watson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Noble, that council approve the special event permit for the 2023 Childcan Polar Bear Dip to be held on Saturday, March the 4th, 2023, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Little Beach, subject to the following recommended conditions. The organizers complying with the special events policy as adopted by council. Liability insurance be provided by the organizers of the event in the amount of $5 million, naming the corporation of the municipality of Central Elgin as co-insured and held harmless. The final schedule and location of the event being approved by the Director of Infrastructure and Community Services, and the applicant being responsible for contacting St. John's or a similar organization to be on site during the event.
Thank you. Comments or questions from council? All those in favor? Very good. Thank you. Number 4, Elgin County Drowning Prevention Coalition Charity Swim. Deputy Mayor Noble and Councillor Bachman.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Bachman, that council approve the special events permit for the 2023 Elgin County Drowning Prevention Coalition Charity Swim to be held at Little Beach the week of July 3rd to July the 7th, 2023, weather permitting, subject to the following recommended conditions. The organizers complying with the special events policy as adopted by council. Liability insurance be provided by the organizers of the event in the amount of $5 million, naming the corporation of the municipality of Central Elgin as co-insured and held harmless. The final schedule and location of the event being approved by the Director of Infrastructure and Community Services, and the applicant being responsible for contacting St. John's Ambulance or a similar organization to be on site during the event.
Sorry, seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Receive for information. We have County of Elgin Economic Development and Tourism, copy of their January 2023 newsletter. Canadian Congenital Heart Alliance, copy of the correspondence from CCHA proclaiming the week of February 7th to 14th to be Congenital Heart Week. And the Kettle Creek Conservation Authority, notice of meeting for Conservation Authority levy approval. Comments or questions? Did anyone wish to speak to any of these? Okay, then can I get a mover? Councillor Bachman, Deputy Mayor Noble.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Bachman, seconded by Deputy Mayor Noble, that correspondence items number 1 through number 3 be received as information and filed.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Now we're moving to reports. Central Elgin Planning Office. Number 1, CEP 6422 consent application 300 Colbert Street, Killens Marina. Can I get a mover? Councillor Watson. And a seconder, Councillor Halpin.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Watson, seconded by Councillor Halpin, that report CEP 6422 reconsent application 300 Colburn Street, Killens Marine Incorporated be received for information, and that council has no objections to consent application EO 722, subject to the following recommended conditions. Approval of a minor variance to permit a minimum lot depth of 25.33 meters for the severed lot. The applicant demonstrates that the existing development on the retained lot conforms with the R1 zone, or the approval of a minor variance to recognize any zoning deficiencies. The applicant enters into an agreement with the municipality of Central Elgin to address administrative, technical, and financial matters relative to the development of the subject lands, the payment of cash in lieu of the dedication of 5% of the land for parkland purposes. A copy of the reference plan be provided to the municipality of Central Elgin, and a drainage reassessment be done if necessary at the owner's expense.
Councilors, any questions or comments? Sorry, councilors, any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item number 2, CEP 0123, an application to amend the Township of Yarmouth bylaw 1998-42595 Walnut Street. Mr. Rodney and Ms. Trudy Malloy. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Bachman, seconded by Councillor Watson.
The motion reads, Mayor Sloan, moved by Councillor Bachman, seconded by Councillor Watson, that report CEP 0123 be application to amend the Township of Yarmouth bylaw 1998-42595 Walnut Street be received for information, and that direction be given by council to prepare a site-specific draft amendment to the Township of Yarmouth bylaw for the proposed residential use on lands located at 42595 Walnut Street, which may be legally described as Concession 3, Part Lot 4, Plan 47, Part Lot 14, Reference Plan 11 R17661, Part 1, Plan 213, Lot 15, Section 47, Municipality of Central Elgin, and that further that a date for a public meeting be established in accordance with Ontario Regulation 54506 as amended.
Questions or comments? Councillor Halpin, Councillor Graham and I drove by. This doesn't front onto Stone Church, does it? It does. Is it right next to the cemetery? So we saw it, and there's land, there's stuff there now. Someone's been using it to fill. Is that correct? This is the location we're talking about?
Yes, the parcel that is immediately adjacent to the cemetery. That is the parcel of land that was subject to the consent. That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And its frontage is 60.
I believe it's 60. I'm trying to see what it is on here. Specifically, yeah, roughly about 60 feet.
Thank you, Kevin. And it's being severed from the property behind?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Number 3, applications to amend the municipality of Central Elgin official plan of the Township of Yarmouth bylaw 1998-4980 Sunset Drive, municipality of Central Elgin, care of Westell Developments. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Councillor Morgan, or Councillor Halpin and Councillor Connors.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Halpin, second by Councillor Connors, that report CEP 0223 reapplications to amend the municipality of Central Elgin official plan and the Township of Yarmouth bylaw 1998-4980 Sunset Drive be received for information, and that direction be given by council to prepare a site-specific draft amendments to the municipality of Central Elgin official plan and the Township of Yarmouth zoning bylaw for the proposed industrial commercial uses on lands located at 4980 Sunset Drive, which may be legally described as part of Lot 2, Concession 2, Registered Plan 11R 10813, Municipality of Central Elgin, County of Elgin. My apologies. There's one more line. My apologies. And further that, a date for a public meeting be scheduled in accordance with Ontario Regulation 54306 and 54506 as amended. I apologize.
No apology necessary. It's been, we've had a good amount of information coming in tonight. Any discussions, questions, comments, councillors? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. CEP 0323, applications to amend the Village of Port Stanley bylaw number 1507384. Is that right? George Street, Morningstar Real Estate Holdings, and Big Beard Investments Limited. Could I get a mover? Councillor Bachman and a seconder, Councillor Watson.
Motion reads, Mayor Sloan, moved by Councillor Bachman, seconded by Councillor Watson, that report CEP 0323, reapplication to amend the Village of Port Stanley bylaw number 1507-384 George Street be received as information, and that direction be given by council to prepare a site-specific draft amendment to the Village of Port Stanley zoning bylaw for a proposed residential use on the lands at 384 George Street, which lands may be legally described as lots 44, 45, and 46, registered plan 223 in the municipality of Central Elgin. And further, that a date for a public meeting be established in accordance with Ontario Regulation 54506 as amended.
Sorry, question, Councillor? Councillor Halpin, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Sloan. So I have a couple of questions about this. I wasn't sure how to read this exactly. I could see that obviously staff feels that it's a low number of condos to have for what the property is, and that it would be a more viable project and be better able to maintain itself in the long term if there were more condos. But then there's also this expression that right now there's not enough detail about parking and there may be more need for parking, but then there's also the constraint of turnaround and so forth. So I was kind of in this bind with it where it looks like on one hand, if you add condos, then the project becomes more future sustainable. But then if you add condos, then you also need to add parking. And so that becomes sort of a difficulty. If it were up to staff, would they recommend that this project would benefit from more or less of those two different things? And do you believe that it is viable then as is?
Thank you, Councillor Halpin. I will give Mr. McClure a chance with that one.
Thank you, Mayor Sloan, through you to Councillor Halpin. I guess there's a number of things that I guess should be kind of clarified with this application. As noted in the report, ultimately, this was the first time that we had seen the revised proposal. So there, throughout the consultation process, we had seen three different applications or proposals, concepts. This is the one that was advanced, and the nature, or I guess what stemmed a lot of the commenting through the report that may seem like a bit of a negative bent to it is it stems back to, if you go to the final page in the report that actually shows the proposal itself. They have identified in the plan a hatched area along George Street that shows assumed road widening. That wasn't in line with what we had originally discussed at the consultation meeting. So they're aware of the concerns that have been raised prior to submitting the application in the report to them. They're aware that the issue here and the larger road widening that's required. So they're going back, and there will be, hopefully in advance of the public meeting, providing some minor revision, because ultimately if there is a revision, the proposed amendment that is shown in the application might not reflect what they can do on the site. But specifically with with respect to the viability, this is something that I pose as a general question. It's something that typically when we're dealing with plans of condominium, we're dealing with larger numbers of units. This kind of reads as a traditional cul-de-sac type of development. There was an issue of proposed or a concern with respect to parking, off-street parking, because typically when you have a municipal road standard, and Mr. Perrin can speak more to some of these things, ultimately it allows for the provision of off-street parking. In this configuration, you wouldn't be able to have reasonable traffic movement through the site. Currently, as it stands, they're only showing one parking space. That was something else that was brought up. They thought that they would be able to put a parking space in a garage, which isn't consistent with what we've taken in the past. So there's a couple technical things that they need to address, and they are looking at working on that. And that ultimately, based on if things shift on this plan, you can see a yellow line that's a setback limit from the woodlot. There's this woodland limit, which is actually what the feature itself exists. There's a couple of geotechnical setbacks in the back there. So we require some further clarification as how to these kind of like incremental changes could impact the viability of the development to meet the policies. But then again, from a financial perspective, that's kind of out of my depth. It was something that I brought up as a question to the as I guess to council and to staff, is that ultimately when you're dealing with something like this, I mean, with infrastructure, you have 8 units that are as part of a condo corp are going to be required to be on the hook for replacement costs and those sorts of things. So from a financial perspective over the long term, it was more of a question, and maybe the applicant will be able to provide some more of those details at the consultation, so at the public meeting, just to see what that structure would be. It was more of a question of long-term viability in this type of tenure with this few number of units.
Thank you, Mr. McClure. Councillor Halpin.
Thank you. So just to make sure that I understand this, then there are parts here that aren't fully clear and that we're going to have to wait and see what we get about that. And so ultimately, by voting to move this forward and allow them to go to Elgin County, we're creating an opportunity where then they can come back to us and we can have that public meeting and that site plan and all of those things to look it over.
Mr. McClure, please.
Thank you, Mayor Sloan, through you to Councillor Halpin. The way that they've structured this now is that they ultimately were looking to get the zoning in place in order to go forward with the plan of condominium. Because it's different, the different approval authority processes, they didn't want to advance them in tandem. With this, they wanted to advance something that we were supportive through the zoning, that then they could go in and get the site details addressed through the plan of condominium. So that's where they're getting into some of this level of detail at this stage in order to advance the plan of condominium proposal at a later stage. And that's where the comments on site parking and garbage enclosures and some of those other things have been raised at this level, just because by going through the zoning, you're permitting the principle of use on the property, and it really limits our ability to do stuff down the road through those other processes because the use has been established with those setbacks and everything else. So that's where if by going forward and nailing it down at this stage, we're able to alleviate those concerns at the municipal level, as opposed to our limitations when we now have a county approval that dealing with the condo. So that's why this needs to be addressed now. The purpose of the report is to identify these, hopefully have the applicant address them at the public meeting. And then that gives them time to, again, if there's other issues from, as we've seen today, from neighboring property owners that they want to raise, that they then can come back and address with a revised plan. It gives them that opportunity to address some of the concerns that we've raised, which they may not be in agreement with, or address any concerns and hear those concerns that the council and public might have.
Thank you. Councillor Connors, please.
Just a point and I guess a leading question to Councillor, through you, Mayor, to Councillor Halpin's point, and also to Councillor Graham in the past has mentioned this. Port Stanley, we've dealt with a number of parking issues down there, and I think, going forward, I don't know whether I can make a recommendation or not, but what I'd like to state is that any building, any condo, any apartment going up there should be self-sustaining as far as parking goes. I don't know whether the building can go up one more floor or down one floor, but they should supply parking, and it needs to be self-sustained that way. So parking is supplied as part of there, so they're not stealing parking places elsewhere in Port Stanley.
Thank you, Councillor Connors. I believe are there rules on that, Mr. McClure?
Yes, Mayor Sloan, through you. There are specific provisions that are parking requirements And that's one of the reasons why we raised it to them through this process and in the report, because that we know that it is a concern, not only in Port Stanley, but elsewhere, that we need to be able to accommodate parking for the proposed use on the site. So it doesn't become a nuisance to neighboring property owners or an enforcement issue down the road for the municipality.
Very well. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item number 5, application for draft plan of condominium approval, proposed conditions 279 Hill Street, Morgan John and Ada Avia. Mover and a seconder, please. Mover, Councillor Bachman, seconder, Councillor Halpin.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Bachman, seconded by Councillor Halpin, that report CEPO 423, reapplication for draft plan of condominium approval, proposed conditions 279 Hill Street be received for information, and further that council approve the attached municipal draft plan conditions to be forwarded to the acting manager of planning for the County of Elgin with a request that they be included in the county's decision on the proposed draft plan of condominium.
Discussion, councillors? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? And carried. Luckily, we're jumping ahead a bit. Next, we have a Director of Fire Rescue Services Fire Chief's report. Can I get a mover and a seconder for the report, please? Deputy Mayor Noble and Councillor Halpin.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Halpin, that report FS 0123, re-monthly alarm activities report, December of 2022, be received for information.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now on to the bylaws. Okay, for the bylaws, I just need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Halpin and Councillor Connor.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Halpin, seconded by Councillor Connors, that bylaws 2759, 2760, 2762 be read a first and a second time.
Comments or questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. I need a mover and a seconder for the second motion. Councillor Bachman and Councillor Watson, thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Bachman, seconded by Councillor Watson, that bylaws 2759, 2760, and 2762 be read a third time and finally passed.
Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And now we're into other business. For the main beach volleyball nets, I've attached a report. There's an attached report from May 2022. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Mover, Councillor Watson, seconder. Sorry, did I go to turn? Oh, seconder, Deputy Mayor Noble.
Sorry, Mayor Sloan, we're actually looking for direction. We've attached the previous report that the previous council considered, but at this time, I think we're looking for the direction of the current council on this matter.
So, Councillor Halpin, did you have a question? Ask Mr. Brooks. Did you want to present on this, Mr. Brooks? For background, sorry.
Sure. So in May of 2022, staff brought forth a report bringing council pricing for 2 volleyball courts. Included in those volleyball courts would be 2 aluminum posts and nets and hardware. The cost for those for 2 volleyball courts was approximately $10,000. Council decided not to go forward with the volleyball nets in 2022. I know there has been some talk with some counselors recently about the installation of volleyball courts. Council could proceed with the proposal that was brought forth in May of 2022. In addition to that, council may also wish to consider 2 volleyball courts or 1 volleyball court, however many council would wish to put in, but rather than installing aluminum posts and nets, we could put in 6x6 pressure treated posts with a net, and the cost of that would be $1,500 per court.
Counselor Graham.
And I would recommend, I do agree, Jeff, that we definitely should look at a quote for the 6x6s with wood, but we don't need to, from all the times I've talked to all the different people that have been emailing me about the volleyball nets, we don't need the nets. They bring their own nets. So we could take that probably right off of there. There hasn't been anybody who said that they wanted a net because they all like their own anyway. So I think that would reduce the cost as well.
Counselor Bachman.
Yeah, in consultation with Mr. Liu, who sent in the original email, I think we all got a copy back in December, whatever. In his correspondence, he actually mentioned that he, and I'm not even going to call it an association, him and friends who really missed that opportunity were willing to supply their own nets. And he was the kind of the moving force behind the research into that. Thank you very much too for getting the quote on the 6x6 posts. I'd like to see us put 2 courts in down there with just the posts and obviously the hookups. But from what I don't live in Port Stanley, but when I visit, I know that's a highlight area. At least it was before COVID. I mean, those courts were full. If there was 8-10 courts, I don't know how many there were, they were packed. And I realized that there was some leagues and blah, blah, blah established. But being there last summer, I also noticed that a lot of people were bringing their own, but the problem was they were setting them up in awkward areas and amongst kids, and it was almost as if there was no planned area, which there wasn't. And volleyball was just happening randomly all over the beach. Whereas if we had a designated area for it, I think would alleviate a lot of people setting up their little camps and so on.
Thank you. Other counselors? Counselor Graham, then Counselor Watson. Oh, go to Counselor Watson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'll raise you, Dave, 2 courts, and I would go with 4 just in case for tournament purposes, because if they may want to set up tournaments and people stay a little bit longer, I would recommend 4 courts, so 8 posts. Thank you.
Council or Deputy Mayor Noble.
I like Councillor Watson's comment on the 4 courts too. I think if we don't have any maintenance on it, because once the posts are in, that'll pretty much be all that we have to do as far as staffing. And it should control the cost quite a bit.
Counselor Graham.
So one of the concerns about having more than 2 sets of courts is the amount of traffic that, the amount of parking that they take when they come down. If you have 4 courts and you're having 6 people, 24, whatever on each, it takes away a lot of the parking turnover for the businesses. And so Mackey's and GT's have both brought that forward as a concern of theirs, because it does limit, if there's most times they're staying all day, so they don't have the turnover, they don't have the parking for the other people. So those are the concerns that I think 4 might be a bit too many.
Thank you, Counselor Graham. Counselor Watson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just looking at this old document here, it said there was 8 before, so we're having it as already. And as long as I remember, Mackey's had their own parking anyways there, so there's no paid parking there. And I don't know, I'd rather keep people down there playing and having fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Halpin.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Sloan. As Port Stanley residents, you and Councillor Graham might know this better, but do most of the beachgoers not stay all day?
That's a good question, Counselor Halpin. I'm not sure the answer to that, but I can pass it over to Counselor Graham to see what she thinks.
I can tell you that there's a lot of turnover for people coming down to the restaurants. So no, most don't stay all day. The people that maybe sit on the beach do, but there's a lot of turnover for the restaurants down there.
Counselor Bachman.
Personally speaking, if I'm playing volleyball for a few hours, a refreshment or a beverage might be something I might partake in and actually add to GT's pockets.
Thank you. Counselor Graham.
Unfortunately, from GT's report, that does not happen. So I'm just going to defer to the Gateses when they come to me with their concerns about the lack of turnover based on the volleyball tournaments that they have there.
Thank you for those comments, Counselor Graham. Counselor Halpin.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Sloan, I'm not sure if this might be a red herring conversation because ultimately, if we don't install these nets, then it's open beach area. And if it's open beach area, then people will set up their towels and spend the day at the beach. And so regardless of whether it's being used by people for volleyball or whether it's being used by beachgoers for other beaching, it seems like both of those have the possibility of being tolerably long stays. And ultimately, it's even possible that there will be days that the posts exist and yet someone has put their towel down.
Thank you for that. Counselor Bachman, then Counselor Graham. Thank you.
Yeah, it seems we're getting quite a conversation on some volleyball, but I would be willing to support Mr. Watson's forecourt idea.
Counselor Graham.
I think that we should usually take into consideration the businesses that are down there and what the people are requesting. So far, they've been requesting 2 sets of nets. Again, just here to represent what the Port Stanley residents want, as my job is.
And I
So
appreciate
I'm letting
that.
you know what they've been requesting.
Thank you. And I appreciate that.
Sorry, one more thing. And also there was a request on consideration and consultation for location.
Well, any other thoughts before we go to a vote? Oh, Mr. Brooks, thank you.
Just wanted to make a recommendation to council that if council does proceed with the installation of volleyball courts, staff does not have the capacity to supervise these courts. So it would be a first come, first serve basis, and individuals, if it's council's direction, would bring their own nets, take them down, and that would allow staff to continue to clean the beach with the beach cleaner.
Thank you. So we're learning tonight about friendly amendments. And we have a motion for how many, Mr. Shipway? 4. But we could have a friendly amendment to make that 2. Or we would go with 4. What is the willingness of the room? Counselor Graham.
I'd like to make a motion that we meet in the middle and do 3.
Ms. Wilson.
So procedurally. My understanding was.
Yeah.
Counselor Watson moved, Counselor Bachman seconded.
So it's between them.
So to me, that's what's on the floor for your discussion. If you wanted to make a friendly amendment to that, Counselor Watson and Counselor Bachman would have to agree to that friendly amendment.
Okay, and before that, Counselor Connors was going to talk to us about volleyball.
I actually play, but I think that this is Councillor Graham's area. She has spoken to the people and she is telling us what they want. I think we should listen.
That's very understanding. Folks, could the 2 people want to consider Counselor Bachman?
I'd be willing to agree to the 3, sure. Let's, friendly amendment.
I'm going to ask Mr. Counselor Watson.
Yes.
And then, sir, thank you, sir. And then I'll defer to Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
Who takes all this and somehow makes something out of it, but thank you.
Just for clarity, Mayor Sloan to council, I had prepared it for $1,500 per court. If they're eliminating the nets, is Mr. Brooks got a truer estimate on that you'd want in the motion?
Mr. Brooks?
The cost without the nets would be closer to $1,000.
Thank you.
Just for clarification, it would be $1,000 per court.
And again, my apologies. clarification on the location was because there was an indication that you wanted some consultation on that. Okay, if you can give me that direction, I can include that in the motion.
Councillor Bachman.
Yeah, I believe Councillor Graham mentioned that they would appreciate some consultation on where they would like it set up, which I'm agreeable to. So if you want to add that.
Mr. Shipway, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, who's the they in this instance who are staff consulting with?
I would say the businesses that are being affected down there. So-
Could we be a little less general? That'd be helpful.
That would be extremely helpful if there was some specificity to who we were consulting with.
Sorry, what's the question? Mr.
Well, it's a little bit general to say checking with businesses. So I don't know that that's something that would be to be put
So
on.
Mackey's and GT's. If we can consult with
Okay.
them.
Sure. Deputy Mayor Noble.
I don't think we're in a rush to put these posts up unless we want them in time for the polar dip, but I'm just wondering if we get a little bit more information now that we've all settled at 3 courts, get a little bit more information, and then maybe at our next meeting, we'll have a location.
Mr. Shipway.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we'll consult as directed with the 2 businesses. I don't think it would likely be back for the February 13th meeting, but before May 24, I'm sure we can have this all sorted.
Thank you, Mr. Shipway.
Mayor Sloan, I've prepared something in draft, and by all means, I can take further direction from council. The draft motion reads, moved by Councillor Watson, seconded by Councillor Bachman, that council direct staff to install 3 beach volleyball courts on Main Beach for public use on a first come, first served basis with no supervision, and that said courts include wooden posts and hardware at an approximate cost of $1,000 per court, and that staff consult with GT's and Mackey's on an appropriate location.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Number 2, Cobblestone House, 6378 Quaker Road. This has a familiar ring to it. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Connors, seconded by Councillor Halpin.
The motion reads, Mayor Sloan, moved by Councillor Connors, seconded by Councillor Halpin, whereas the owner of 6738 Quaker Road has requested council issue a notice of withdrawal of heritage designation, and therefore the council of the corporation of the municipality of Central Elgin directs staff to issue a notice of withdrawal pursuant to the Ontario Heritage Act for 6738 Quaker Road.
Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Number 3, Port Stanley seasonal outdoor vendor permits, bylaw 2714. Mover and a seconder, please. Oh. Sorry, Mr. Shipway, you wanted to speak?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, apologies for that. For the past 3 years, the municipality has not issued Port Stanley seasonal outdoor vendor permits, and those are permits where vendors can set up and sell non-food wares in and around the beach area, in favor of directing those potential sales to brick and mortar stores within the village of Port Stanley. That was previously given through the emergency control group. Since that has been removed, staff seek direction if we are to issue Port Stanley seasonal outdoor vendor permits again, or if we continue not issuing those to direct persons to the brick and mortar stores within the village.
Thank you. Councillor Bachman?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Shipway, last summer, I believe I was down there and there was a few cultural events going on down the beach. Selling of food. Is that a different permit altogether?
Mr. Shipway.
Yes, sir. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Those are sanctioned special events by the Special Events Committee, and those receive approval through a resolution, much like this evening.
Councillor Connors.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Shipway, so do the stores down there not want these vendors on the beach?
Mr. Shipway.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I wouldn't want to surmise. It was just a decision that was made so that if persons were going to purchase those wares, they would go to the brick and mortar stores within the village.
Can I have Councillor Graham weigh in on this, please?
And not to talk not about the refreshments or the seasonal vendors, but I wanted more to draw attention to the horse-drawn carriage, the rules that they're attempting or that are considered in this item with regards to the horse-drawn carriages. As part of Dickens Days, which is our biggest event in Port Stanley and brings in the most amount of people in the winter months, one of the main draws of that is the horse-drawn carriages. So in these in these things that they're outlining, that only 5 licenses will be used for Dickens Days, we're actually thinking about expanding Dickens Days through the BIA to 2 weekends. So that may limit the amount that we're going to be able to have the horse-drawn carriages. Night operations requiring running lights, brake lights, and headlights. Sometimes Dickens Days horse-drawn carriages will run into the evening because obviously we have the time shift and it gets dark early. They haven't had to have those yet or before this. The horse, I mean, some of these requests or some of these agenda items, the horse shall be groomed while resting. The vet has to have a horse approved 2 times a year. Each horse has to be groomed daily. A horse isn't allowed to have dandruff. Like, this is going to be a really difficult situation. So we're not going to, basically what's going to happen is we're not going to be able to have horse-drawn carriages, which is not going to draw the amount of people into Port Stanley that it usually does. So I would recommend that we completely ixnay that one right off of this general provision.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Mr. Shipway is going to speak and then Councillor Halpin. Thank you.
Through Mr. Mayor, the entirety of the licensing bylaw was put on just for informational purposes, so we didn't cut out that piece. However, again, any of the special events are historically by council exempted from the requirements of the licensing bylaw. So in the past, that hasn't been a requirement, and it would assume that it wouldn't be a requirement going forward for special events committee. The licensing component is pre-existing and was put in by the municipality historically to deal with a person wanting to operate a year-round horse and carriage operation.
Councillor Halpin.
Thank you. I'd like to note as well that while I'm aware that we are voting right now really just about the outdoor vendor permits, as I read through the whole license bylaw as well, I felt like there was another section that I was concerned about, and that was that I think we've created some vulnerability for workers in the adult entertainment category there. So if Councillor Graham is open to it, maybe what we could propose is that for now we vote on the outdoor vendor permits, and then if council has ideas about things that they feel could be improved, then maybe we could come back to this bylaw and see about changes to one or both sections as something either
Excellent.
in notice of motion or that we could prepare for next council meeting.
Thank you. I think that's an excellent idea and I appreciate you both looking into it. Mr. Shipway, you're okay if we move forward with that?
Through Mr. Mayor, yes, whatever council directs, we'd be happy to carry out.
Thank you. As a Dickens Day caroler, am I subject to any of these police? Anyway, I digress. Well, I was Councillor Watson, I was worried about the dandruff. Okay, so we have a mover and a seconder. We don't, no, because we spoke before it. So I need a mover and a seconder. I'll defer to you on this one, Ms. Wilson.
So Mayor Sloan, just procedurally, we've given you the options, whether you want a staff direction to proceed or not to proceed. We're still looking for that, or is there?
Councillor Graham.
I would recommend that we not proceed with this. I think it's been working fine the way it's going. I don't think that we need the licensing. I think it actually brings more people into town if we do have little sidewalk vendors. I don't think it takes that way. It's the same as my market for the Dickens Days. It doesn't take away from the businesses. It actually helps bring more people into town.
Deputy Mayor Noble.
We don't want a little bit of control with the licenses. I'm defaulting to you, Councillor Graham, but I just kind of think a little bit of control with a little bit of licensing is a good thing, but again, I'm defaulting to you.
Councillor Graham.
I'm just of the opposite opinion that we have too much control already.
Councillor Halpin.
Thank you. Historically in the past, sorry, through you to staff, historically in the past, what issues have been resolved by the licensing?
Staff have any comments, please?
Pertaining to Port Stanley outdoor seasonal vendors, is that the question? It just has allowed previously council put a policy in place that dictated where vendors could set up and how many would be issued. And again, just during the pandemic, they weren't issued. So we're just simply asking, do you want us to issue those licenses or do you want us to continue not issuing these licenses?
Councillor Bachman. Thank you, Mr. Shipway.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Shipway. Through the licenses, do you actually control what is being sold as well? And the only reason I'm asking is because coming from the high school background, there's a lot of drug paraphernalia that is now acceptable, but I'm not sure I would want it sold on my streets, especially on the beach with a lot of kids.
Mr. Shipway.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the outdoor seasonal vendor provisions do dictate that refreshments can't be sold and then that the wares have to be identified beforehand within the license application.
So with that, I would definitely, I think we should be licensed if we have to, only because people coming in, I know they have these crafty ideas and I'm all for crafts and all that other homemade stuff. It's just what we can't control. And if someone's coming in with, once again, drug paraphernalia that they can sell bongs or whatever, they can sell on the beach because it's legal, right?
Councillor Halpin.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Sloan. Where do we find the outdoor vendors most often set up?
Sorry, Mr. Shipway.
Through Mr. Mayor, there's 16 spots throughout the beach walkway area and along the harbor front where historically they've been permitted to set up.
Councillor Graham, what would you like to do? Or what's the discussion from councillors?
just a
I'm sorry,
question.
I'm getting a little bit lost on this one. I
That's
do
okay.
apologize. We
Through
started
you.
early
Through
and I
you.
think we're getting near the
Yeah.
end.
Through you, Mayor Sloan, Mr. Shipway, so if we don't issue the license, then people can't set up, is that the idea?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's correct.
Okay. I was confused there too. So I would recommend that we start issuing those licenses again so that we can start having people having the vending
I agree.
stations.
Councillor Connors.
One last comment. I think through you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Shipway, you indicated that on the license submission, they have to disclose what they're going to sell. So we can control it that way.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Shipway. Thank you, Captain Connors. Thank you, Councillor Connors. As I say, we've had a lot of information come through tonight. So we need a mover and a seconder on that council directs staff to proceed with the issuance of Port Stanley seasonal outdoor vendor permits for the 2023 season. Deputy Mayor Noble, followed by Councillor Bachman.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Bachman, that council directs staff to proceed with the issuance of Port Stanley seasonal outdoor vendor permits for the 2023 season.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Yes, thank you. Under last piece, as I said, I had an item here. I'm sorry, Councillor Halpin, about which part? Sure. Is that sometime it would be brought up? I apologize. I don't know the particulars on that. So Councillor Halpin, is that Mr. Shipley? Would you like to do it now? Mr. Shipley?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think we can just put our previous licensing bylaw report and the bylaw with the chronology on for the next agenda, and it will be there in its entirety, and council can provide whatever direction it would like from that. Is that, you're comfortable with
I
that?
want to make sure it's comfortable with Counselor Halpin. Right. Verbal direction, that's okay. Well, it's an important point and I thank you for raising it. I just want to make sure that that's okay with you. Okay. So noted. Item number 4 is for me. I wanted to say, as we all know, the municipal election resulted in an entirely new council. The new members of council are very excited about the term and are anxious to work together with staff. It is, I believe, imperative with an entirely new council that we have the necessary support to achieve what this team, what I would like to achieve, what you would like to achieve, and what we promise the voters of Central Elgin. I've placed on the agenda tonight a proposal that I received from Tim Dobby to provide strategic advice for council and staff and assist in defining staff-council relations. I selected Mr. Dobby, who I've worked with after speaking with other mayors in Ontario. He has a long career in the municipal field and was with Burlington for 34 years, ultimately as CAO. He worked with 2 of the 3 councils 4 years ago who had a clean sweep, if you will, getting great reviews from staff and council. Mr. Dobby would meet with personally and interview the council members and staff and use the info to work towards a staff council protocol, giving us the direction we need to make sure we are making the best use of the staff time. This work, I believe, is essential to establishing a relationship between the council and staff to understand clearly the relationship between the 2 groups and what the roles are for each moving forward. I would ask that tonight council consider the following motion. Do I need to leave the chair?
I'll read this. As provided by Mayor Sloan, that Central Elgin Council approved the proposal from Tim Adobe Consulting dated January 6, 2023 to provide strategic advice for council and senior staff in Central Elgin to assist in defining staff council practices in the amount not to exceed $14,750 plus HST, and that staff take part in the work of the consultant as required, including making the necessary administrative arrangements between the consultant and the municipality of Central Elgin.
Can I get a mover? Councillor Graham and a seconder. Councillor Bachman. Any discussion? Sir, Councillor Connors.
So what, through you, Mayor Sloan, what timeline would this individual or this consultant be with us for?
It's limited to 3 months, but he'll be here next week to start interviews. Councillor Halpin.
I know that we had been planning to work on strategic plan at some point in the future. Is this sort of going to be a component of that, or is this separate to that?
I would leave that for now, Councillor Halpin, in the sense that I don't know that there's necessarily going to be a crossover. I'm not 100% sure. Anyone else? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Bylaw 2761, confirmation by, we have no closed session pieces, right? Bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council, bylaw 2761. May I get a mover and a seconder? Councillor Halpin. Councillor Noble.
Motion reads, Mayor Sloan, moved by Councillor Halpin, seconded by Deputy Mayor Noble, that bylaw 2761 be read a first and a second time.
All those in favor? Against? Approved. Bylaw 2761 be read a first and second time. Mover, Councillor Watson, seconder, Councillor Connors.
Just for clarification, this would be the second reading, Mayor Sloan.
First
Okay,
and second time.
certainly.
Thank you.
Yep, so moved by Councillor Watson, seconded by Councillor Connors, that bylaw 2761 be read a third time and finally passed.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. That bylaw 276. Oh, sorry. Just a motion to adjourn. Wow. All, Counselor Bachman, Counselor Halpin, all those in favor?
Final
Adjourn.
motion, Mayor Sloan?
Yep.
Moved by Counselor Bachman, seconded by Counselor Halpin, that the regular meeting of council dated Wednesday, January the 25th, 2023 be adjourned at 9:21 PM. And the next regular meeting of council be scheduled for Monday, February 13th, 2023 at 7 PM.
All those in favor?